Alright, so now we're at part 2 of our Google Sheets video motion analysis. You have already set up data that looks kind of like this. Your frames are probably different. And, actually you could have YouTube next to you, split screen here. And here's actually the first video. It's already up live. And so now you can watch this video at the same time as you do this. We got the frames. Yours are different. You got the times. Yours are, for this particular lab, should be the same, but for a future lab will be different. You got the distances. Yours will be most likely different, but not too different. And then we had figured out how to do slope of the distance, slope of the slope, so slope of the speed. And if you really wanted to, slope of the slope of the slope, slope of the acceleration, which gave you jerk. So this column F, you may or may not have, that is not required. But these first three, the distance, the speed, and the acceleration, those will be required. So here's what we're going to do. First things first, go to time and highlight all of the time and distance data, all the way down to here. Okay, good. So we didn't highlight these top two up here. We didn't highlight the 60 or the blue bar, but the time and distance data. Now if you come over to the right here, I think on your screen it's revealed, but if you don't see that little chart symbol, you hit the little ellipse over here, the 3 dots, and this, insert chart. Of course, you could always right click over here and choose, let's see, do they have insert chart? Actually, I don't see it there. So, oop, trackpad has gone wild. So let me highlight all that data again. And there we go. You could always go from, let's see, up here, insert chart. There you go, from the insert menu. But most of you have this little icon over here, so get used to that. Use that. Click on that insert chart, and boom. Now yours may not pop up looking exactly like this, and that's okay because we're going to adjust it anyway. So first things first, we're going to change this to an XY scatter. Here we go. You get a bunch of dots. Now your pattern actually should look just like this. If your pattern looks otherwise, then you might have to make some adjustments, but most of the computers seem to default to this setup. Now we'll worry about making the axes pretty and the rest of that in a future video, but for right now, let's just get some basic analysis via the graph. I'm going to bring our zoom back down to 100%. We'll get a little more on the screen here. Now your x-axis should be time, and your series should be distance. If that's different, that's something we'll have to deal with. I'll do a little error issue or fixer video later on. So for right now, we're going to do the very quick and simple version of this. In your chart editor, go to customize. Here it is. Go down to series. Remember, pause if you need to catch up. And then scroll on down and include trend line. Now clearly, this trend line does not capture the data all that well, and that's because the type is linear. So let's change that type from linear to polynomial. Ah, it looks much nicer, doesn't it? The degree is 2, and that's what we want. Then, label. Under label, we don't want none. We actually want to use the equation. So we write use equation, and actually, we are done with this graph. You can close the chart editor, grab this graph, and actually move it off to the side. Put it up over here. Good. I don't know why this one's still hanging around, but if you have an extra graph you don't want, just delete it. Okay, good. Graph looks nice. Got an equation on top. We're going to end up using that equation. We'll talk about that in a future video too. Now, we're going to make a speed versus time graph. So, we need to highlight our speed column. And here, don't bother highlighting anything else. Well, actually, maybe you can. Highlight the speed and the time, but you may have trouble doing that with the controls. So here's what you do, very simple. Go to the column D, start with that slope highlight the whole thing, and insert chart. Now, you're going to get this, probably a column chart, doesn't really matter. Come over here and make this scatter. And that looks well and good, but there's no X. And so we want to add an X-axis. So come down here to X-axis, click on that Add X-axis, select range. So we click in there. Now you can actually click on the screen with your mouse, or you can just look at it and say, oh, what I want on my X-axis is time. The very first box we want, the header, is B2. So I'll write B2, then I'll put a colon. Colon means all the way down to my very last piece of time data is B25. So I can come down here at B2 to B25, click OK, and now I got a time axis in there. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Good. So we're going to do the same thing we did before. Go over to Customize, Series, Trend Line. Now this time a linear seems to fit it pretty well. So we're going to leave that alone. Label. And let's make this use equation. Boom. We can X out of the chart editor. Now we have our slope graph, which is also known as our speed graph. Pull it over here so it's out of the way. Now, hopefully you're starting to get the idea. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to do the slope of the slope graph. So highlight all that data. Click Insert Chart. This one's looking a little funky, but don't worry about it. There's actually some use in this data. So let's go to here. It's on Customize. We don't want that just yet. We want it on Setup. So go back to Setup. We want to change this to Scatter. Okay, looks like a big old mess. That's okay though. We need to add an X-axis because right now there's nothing along the X-axis. We want time there. And so the data we want for time is that time column. Start with the header box, the header cell, that's B2, colon, all the way down to, in mine it's B25. It might be some other box, cell in yours. So that covers all the time data. And boom, look at that, so nice. Last thing to do, Customize, Series, Trend Line. And that one's okay actually, leave it linear. You'll see why, that one's okay. And use equation. Close this up. We can bring that one down on over here. It's a little tight fitting these in. You may want to put it over here next to your distance graph. Here's your slope of slope graph. And for those of you who did the jerk, you can actually do the same thing. Highlight. Insert chart. Setup, good. We want to make this a scatter. Add an X-axis. The range we want is again those times from B2 to B25. Good. Go to Customize, Series. Let's put a trend line in there. And we can label it with an equation. Close this up. And finally, bring this all the way over here. Good. And now you have your distance graph, your speed graph, your acceleration graph, and your optional jerk graph. Great. So that's part 2. That's about that. And really this is where you need to get up to. And then afterwards we can do a little error analysis as far as how to use Google Sheets, and then how to finally neaten these all up with axes, titles, and the rest of that. But we got all of our raw data in place and we have it graphed, so that actually has gotten the meat of the work done. Okay, see you